Funding page, enter your account information, and fund your account. CapitalOTBPet.com. Log on today.
Hey race fans, head down to the all-new Clubhouse Racebook. With live horse racing on more than 250 flat-screen TVs, state-of-the-art wagering terminals, and amazing Vegas-style atmosphere. The Clubhouse Racebook, 711 Central Avenue, Albany.
Welcome back to Racing Across America on this Wednesday morning. As promised before the break, we are joined now by Rick Violette, trainer and president of the New York Thoroughbred Horsemen's Association. Good morning, Rick.
Good morning.
And for folks who aren't familiar, NYTHA, New York Thoroughbred Horsemen's Association, what's the purpose, what's the mandate?
Well, the mandate, it's really threefold. It's benevolence for the employees on the backside and those in the industry. We also take steps in the legislations for the protection of the horses and also the employees on the backside. And we also have a mandate to constantly do some research, whether it's LASIX or other tying up or breakdowns or testing or whatever, but those are the three mandates.
And the hot button issue over the past week or so has been one that kind of seemed to calm down a little bit but bubbled up again, as I say, a week and a half or so ago, and some prominent trainers issued a letter calling for the ban of race day LASIX. Subsequently, some horsemen's organizations, including NYTHA, came out with statements about that. Give us your take on this whole LASIX issue and how it's bubbled up over the past week.
It really has, and there's no question it's Jockey Club generated, and they had a lot to do behind the scenes in ramping up to the letter and into the round table and the meeting with Wool the other day. The horse, we have a kind of a simple, it's sometimes meant to be a very complicated issue, but it really isn't. It's about the welfare of the horse, and all the science points that to 90% of the horses bleeding, that it's an increasing episode after episode. It scars the tissue in the lung, and we have a remedy for it. It stops bleeding in some horses. It lessens the episodes of the frequency in other horses, and like all medications, it doesn't have a great impact on some other horses. But absent, a reasoned, scientific, backed-up alternative therapy, we think it's kind of irresponsible to take away the therapy when we know there's still, put your head in the sand and pretend that they're not bleeding, or let them bleed and take more time between races. And the practical measures are just staggering when you start to think of it. It's nice for guys to have 100 horses in large outfits that they have other horses to replace. A horse that just bled might need extra weeks. They have another maiden, another A other than, another stake horse that they can kind of slot in. But the small and middle size outfits would be devastated by something like this. Small owners, all of a sudden, we have another issue that would limit their experience in horse racing. We have so many physical issues that we address with horses that we have there's no remedy for. This is one we have a remedy, and to take that away it is really, it isn't best for the horse. And our mantra is, if it's good for the horse, it's good for racing. If it's not good for the horse, it isn't good for racing. And nobody, even in the latest onslaught of rhetoric and everything, they've talked about perception and all that. They haven't spoken about what's best for the horse, and I think that gets lost out there.
And as I watched the video replay of the roundtable on Sunday, there was a spokeswoman from the RMTC who made the point that I think everybody agrees with, but it's worth stating, that no medication is not good for the horse. I mean, to say, geez, zero medication, because these are athletes, and even human athletes, you have to have some kind of medication to rehab after certain situations. And so the idea that we will do away with medications, that isn't in the welfare of the horse either.
Well, it isn't. I mean, I don't know how many millions or tens of millions of people are on a low dose of aspirin a day, and they don't have to be athletes. And, it's therapeutic medication. And that's kind of sometimes also the rhetoric that comes out anti-LASIX, as though medication is necessarily bad, and it isn't. And it's incredibly controlled in the industry. What's happened in the last few years with this program of standardized rules and medications across the country has taken hold. It's not happening as fast as some people would like, but right now 88% of the handle of racing that represents 88% of the national handle are committed to this national program, and that's huge. In New York, we're not there yet. We haven't, dotted all the I's and crossed the T's, but essentially we're there. And as you've seen, and you know for sure that we've reduced fatalities by 40% in the last 2 years, and it's not good enough, and we need to do better. But it's a huge start. We're less than half of the national average because we've done things like clenbuterol is basically out of the game. The corticosteroids are further out from race day. The analgesics, the butes and the banamines, their permitted levels are much lower so that they don't have an effect at the time of the race. So we haven't been sitting on our hands. We're holding firm on the Lasix issue, but we've been very aggressive and proactive in this medication program across the country, along with accrediting laboratories so that they're doing a top-notch job and a multiple violation so that the guys who don't obey the rules and they're frequent offenders, that they can, have some time, a serious time on the bench.
And that's worth reiterating. This has been something, and this has been a hot-button issue now, going back at least 2 or 3 years, maybe even a little bit longer. But there has been progress. A number of states now have signed on to uniform medication rules, as you say. Violations are now being treated differently, too. So the industry is moving. Not as fast as many people would like, but we are moving forward.
If you compare the movement in the last 2 years to the last 20 years, it's light speed. And it's not difficult to change, and it's not easy to change regulations. Some states have to go through legislation, and then other states go through a regulatory process, and there have to be open hearings. So it's never as simple as a mandate, we're going to change it. We've been working very, very hard with the different organizations, the different states to get this thing done, and it'll get done. But the threat of federal legislation, if you don't get it done, is a kind of a sour note. Number one, it probably isn't going to happen. We do have, I'd love to go back to D.C. and tell them the story that's really happening in the industry, because it's actually a very, very good story. That, with the tremendous advancements we've made in aftercare with the horses, and we are taking care of the retired athletes, whether it's the TAA nationally or Take Two and take the lead here in New York. So we have a much better story to tell. We're a better industry than we were, and from the last time we appeared in D.C., and that's the story that should be told out there.
Yeah, and I don't think the mainstream media focuses on that as much, the progress that's been made, as much as the kind of the bad news stories. That maybe that's newspapers in general. You look at the front page, there's a lot of bad news, but I do think that there has been a lot of progress made, as you say, going back a couple of years, that dwarfs progress made prior to that. So we're moving in the right direction. Let's talk a little bit about, as president of New York Thoroughbred Horsemen's Association, a longtime trainer in New York, you've been here over the past 10 years or so as we went through the whole franchise process. That was just, it took too long and was troubling. Looked like there was light at the end of the tunnel, and now we're back in a kind of a position where the franchise is in a little bit of flux, perhaps. You were on a panel yesterday at the Albany Law seminars that were put on that looked at the future of New York racing. What is your take on the future of New York racing?
There are no hard-line answers right now. I can tell everything is on the table, from total privatization to a semi-privatization with an attachment to the government. And this we're supposed to have some kind of an answer by the end of the year. We have to have it by April of next year. But everything is on the table, whether it's for-profit, not-for-profit, and each solution has its own difficulties. There's no question. I think what the horsemen are very much concerned with is that however we move forward, there has to be basically year-round racing. There are 33,000 jobs attached to the industry, and if we took 3 or 4 months off and took the winter off, that would lop that in half, if not worse than that. But it'd only be the first domino. If we took significant time off over the winter, it would cripple the breeding industry. The farms would disappear. All the good work that's been happening and bringing more stallions and having more farms open would quickly reverse because we wouldn't have that year-round platform. and we're very, keenly interested on what they do with Aqueduct, and if they consolidate over at Belmont, that's fine, but somehow we need to have an ironclad agreement and protection on the continued revenue from the VLTs, and a continued commitment that there will be year-round racing in New York to keep the 33,000 jobs going, keep the $4.3 billion impact that we have in the state. And so we're as aggressively interested as we can be.
And give us the Horsemen's take on this past winter down in New York, where they triggered up the schedule a little bit. There was a little bit of condensation as far as the race week. Was that something the Horsemen were okay with?
Yeah, we're not obtuse. There's a very big horse shortage. This year they're projecting another maybe 22,000. Maybe we've bottomed out as far as expected foals. And we understand, we need to put on a responsible product. So if we want to tinker and go to 4-day weeks and make some minor adjustments that make business sense and sit down, we would not push back that hard on it. But at the same time, I think the racing office and the various racing secretaries, they need to do a really hard job of recruiting horses from out of town. And we can't just lower the bar so that the status quo is okay. I think it's a two-phase effort, and if we need to manipulate the dates next year and go to four-day weeks so that we can put on a good product, we'd certainly be able to sit down at the table.
So as New York Horsemen and New York Horsemen's organization, you look around the country, things kind of rebounded in Maryland. Things were absolutely in flux in South Florida, and it seems like they've sorted things out. We'll see how that works. Things have been in flux out in Southern California. We still have to see how that's going to work out. But going forward and looking at the future of New York, is there optimism?
There is. I mean, we're going to be here in one phase and shape. It's just when the unknown sometimes is torturous. And especially like the breeders, and I wish Barry Ostriger would kind of step up and say publicly what he said privately, and they're very concerned about what happens at Aqueduct and the racing dates, because people buy farms, build farms, invest in New York State. It's a long-term planning thing. It's not at a whim. And they need to have some stability in the industry going forward so that they can rest assured that the revenue, the racing dates, the opportunities for New York breds are going to exist.
All right, let's shift attention now to the racing side of the game. I want to talk about some of your runners that have done well at the meet and see what we can look forward to. Just a couple of days ago, we had Skinner Box go out, first time out for Patsy Simons. This one, the dam, had a little bit of a breeding punch behind her. With Better Talk Now was the sibling to the dam. So Skinner Box gets it done. We'll watch the stretch run here. It will be the number 2 Skinner Box winning under Jose Ortiz. First time out, and you would have to think with Better Talk Now, you're looking at a horse that will only get better as things get longer.
I think so. She was awfully game here, and she's been very, very professional from the first day we put tack on her. But you would think two turns would be her strong suit, down the road.
And this was, we're mid-meet, we're just past mid-meet now. But you see anything for her later in the meet?
Actually, not really. We could go back down and point for the Miss Grillo. We could actually go up to the Talma at Woodbine. But it's been an amazing partnership, Patsy and I. She says, I bring the training and she brings the magic, and it's been incredible magic. I think we've won 13 stakes in the last 4 years.
Nice.
So she's a wonderful lady and has a very, very golden touch.
Very good. Let's look a little earlier in the meet. You sent out another first-time starter, Graham Crackers. This is back on July 18th. We're going to watch the stretch run. Number 8, Graham Crackers, by half a length at 9-2, sibling to Ampersand. Now, again, this was early in the meet. Will we see Graham Crackers again?
Actually, the day after the Travers, I forget the name of the stake, but there's a New York Bred Day Showcase Day.
Yeah.
She'll run that day, and it's another filly that I think 2 turns will benefit her, and she actually has a whole lot of pedigree to run on the turf as well down the road. So this was another, I think, high-quality race. She was very game and determined, and was headed and came back, and I don't think sprinting's her strong suit.
Right, I want to ask you about a couple others before we let you go. F.E. Trinket, who hasn't been seen now since, early in July down at Parks, ran 6th in the James Penny. Anything on that New York Showcase day for us?
There is. Actually, the auto is the day after, so we plan to run there. She is the first time in her life she really didn't show up at Parks, and it's probably my fault. She hadn't eaten the last couple of days before the race. Didn't eat well and just showed signs she might not have been 100%, and she showed me definitely the day she ran. So she's doing well now. She's been a wonderful filly for us, and I expect her to rebound big time.
And give us a little update on Samrat.
Samrat, actually, he's back here at the barn. He had a stress fracture in his right shin, and we sent him down to Patty Hogan, and they drilled about a half a dozen or 8 holes in the cannon bone itself to stimulate really good growth back, because sometimes those little stress fractures don't heal well because they're the circulation, and it's not really a broken bone in a way. It is technically, but this way, with drilling the holes, it basically commands the bone to restructure. And he'll be back next year. Hopefully, the expectation is better than ever.
Excellent. Well, Rick, we appreciate the visit. Again, some nice horses have won already. We'll look forward to some more of the remainder of the meet, as Rick trains plenty of horses, but also the president of New York Thoroughbred Horsemen's Association. Want to get some update again on some of those hot button issues. We appreciate the visit.
Thank you very much for having me.
Good luck in the rest of the
Thanks.
meet. All right, that'll wrap things up for Racing Across America for Wednesday morning. Again, no steeplechase, so the 12:25 race is off, but the regular post time at 1